Tonight, an American icon trembles. Ford Motor Company, a name synonymous with the American dream, is delivering a shocking blow to its own workforce. Thousands of jobs are on the line, and the Midwest, long the beating heart of the auto industry, is reeling from a $1.5 billion financial hit. And what caused this upheaval? Not a war overseas, not a sudden economic collapse. It's tariffs, a policy meant to protect American workers, now threatening their very livelihoods. In places like Chicago and Michigan, assembly lines that once hummed with activity now stand eerily still. Workers walk past idle machines, uncertain whether their paychecks will keep coming, their families secure, their futures intact. For decades, Ford symbolized opportunity, the steady hum of production, the pride of crafting cars that rolled off the line and into the streets of America. Families planned their lives around these jobs. Communities thrived because of them. But tonight, that stability is gone. The irony is brutal. A policy designed to bring jobs back to America is causing the opposite. The American auto industry, once a global powerhouse, is now facing disruption that could ripple across the nation. And make no mistake, this is just the beginning. In this story, the losses at Ford are not an isolated incident. They are the first warning signs of a much larger storm that could reshape American manufacturing for years to come. When Donald Trump announced his 2024 re-election campaign, he made a bold promise: put American industry back on top. His America First vision came with a simple goal: protect domestic jobs, rebuild manufacturing, and reduce reliance on imports from abroad. Central to this plan was a 25% tariff on imported cars and parts, a move pitched as the ultimate shield for American workers. The promise sounded straightforward. By making imports more expensive, the thinking went, automakers would be forced to produce more in the United States, creating jobs, boosting local economies, and reviving communities that had seen factories shutter over the past decades. Politically, it was a clear message: American workers come first. But the reality is proving far more complicated and far more painful. Less than a year after the tariffs were imposed, factories are closing lines, production schedules are thrown into chaos, and American companies are facing soaring costs. Instead of building jobs, the policy is forcing layoffs. Instead of boosting domestic production, it's disrupting supply chains meticulously built over decades. What was sold as a protective shield has become a hammer, breaking the very industry it promised to defend. The gap between the promise and reality isn't just a political talking point. It's a growing economic crisis that's already hitting workers, investors, and consumers across the country. The numbers are staggering. Ford Motor Company, one of the pillars of the American auto industry, announced it expects to lose $1.5 billion in 2025 alone due to the ripple effects of the new tariffs. Production halts have hit major plants in Chicago and Michigan, leaving over 9,000 workers suddenly without work. These aren't small layoffs. These are thousands of families facing uncertainty, mortgages to pay, and bills stacking up. So what caused this financial blow? It's the cost of imported components. Batteries, sensors, and control chips, essential for building modern vehicles, especially electric cars, suddenly became far more expensive. Prices for these parts jumped anywhere from 18 to 32%, making each vehicle more costly to produce. To put it into perspective, imagine trying to bake thousands of cakes each day, but the price of flour, sugar, and eggs doubles overnight. You can either raise the price of each cake, risking losing customers, or absorb the costs and take a massive hit to your bottom line. That's the dilemma Ford is now facing, and it's hitting their profits hard. The financial shock isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a warning sign that a policy designed to protect American jobs is instead putting one of America's most iconic companies at risk. And if Ford is struggling this badly, the consequences for the broader auto industry and the millions of workers it supports could be even more severe. A modern car manufacturing is like a finely tuned orchestra. Every part has a role and timing is everything. Ford doesn't just build cars in one city. Engines come from Windsor, Canada, car bodies from Monterrey, Mexico, and final assembly happens in plants across the United States. This cross-border system has been perfected over decades to keep costs low, speed production, and maintain quality. Enter the 25% tariff. Suddenly, a system designed for efficiency has become a maze of delays and extra costs. Components that once flowed seamlessly across borders now carry a heavy tax, forcing Ford to absorb massive additional expenses. Some shipments are delayed or even canceled, causing production lines to idle. Machines built to move cars off the line are now stopped, costing millions every day. Projects that were supposed to launch smoothly, like Ford's next-generation T3 electric vehicle, are now postponed indefinitely. The ripple effect is enormous halted production, delayed launches, and uncertainty that makes it nearly impossible for the company to plan its future. In short, the tariffs aren't just a financial hit. They are disrupting the rhythm of the entire manufacturing process, creating chaos that reaches from the factory floor to the executive boardroom. Behind the staggering numbers and disrupted supply chains are real people, families who rely on these jobs to pay rent, put food on the table, and keep their children in school. In Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, entire communities are feeling the shock. Workers who have dedicated decades to Ford now face layoffs, with no clear timeline for when, or if, they will return to the assembly line. Take Chicago, for example. Over 2,300 employees at the Ford plant were laid off indefinitely in May 2025. In Michigan's Flat Rock plant, another 1,100 workers were affected. These aren't just statistics. Each number represents a household suddenly living with uncertainty. Local businesses, from diners to auto parts suppliers, are seeing a slowdown because their customers are earning less, spending less, and cutting back wherever they can. The ripple effect spreads far beyond factory gates. Children of these workers may have to postpone college plans. Neighborhoods that once thrived around the hum of production are now quieter, with empty parking lots and shuttered shops. What started as a policy aimed at protecting American jobs is leaving thousands of families struggling to make ends meet. While workers feel the immediate pain, Ford's leadership is facing its own crisis behind the scenes. CEO Jim Farley has been blunt about the challenges. The cost of U.S. steel and aluminum is now twice as high as imported alternatives, and building modern electric vehicles with domestic materials alone is nearly impossible. The tariffs aren't just making materials more expensive, they're forcing the company to rethink investments and expansion plans. Projects that were supposed to usher in the next generation of vehicles, like the T3 EV, are now delayed indefinitely. Even Ford's connected vehicle software division had to cut 350 employees to manage costs. Executives are caught between a rock and a hard place. Absorb the rising costs and risk financial losses, or pass them to consumers and risk losing market share. Every decision is a balancing act in a volatile environment that makes long-term planning nearly impossible. The frustration isn't just about money. It's about losing control over a system that has operated efficiently for decades, now thrown into chaos by political decisions. While Ford struggles under rising costs and disrupted supply chains, foreign automakers are moving in to fill the gap. Companies from Europe, South Korea, and Japan are expanding their presence in the U.S. market, benefiting from stable production policies and government export support. For American consumers, this is already noticeable. Cars that were once affordable now carry higher price tags, in some cases thousands of dollars more per vehicle. Meanwhile, foreign competitors can keep prices steady, offering attractive alternatives and slowly chipping away at Ford's market share. The irony is clear. Tariffs were meant to protect U.S. jobs and give domestic manufacturers an edge. Instead, they are making American cars more expensive, pushing customers toward imported models and weakening the very companies they were supposed to help. What was intended as protection has become a disadvantage, leaving U.S. automakers fighting to stay competitive on both price and production efficiency. Ford isn't alone in feeling the shockwave of tariffs. The entire United States auto industry is under pressure, proving that this is a systemic issue, not an isolated problem. General Motors, another pillar of American manufacturing, has had to lower its 2025 profit forecast, expecting losses between $4 and $5 billion. Stellantis, which owns brands like Jeep, Ram, and Chrysler, suspended production at several plants in Canada and Mexico, and laid off roughly 900 U.S. workers. Even foreign automakers with U.S. operations like Toyota and Nissan have had to rethink production strategies. Toyota is considering shifting some RAV4 production from Canada and Japan to its Kentucky plant to avoid tariffs, a process that will be expensive and time-consuming. Nissan halted U.S. orders for certain Infiniti SUV models built in Mexico while increasing output of the Rogue in Tennessee. This pattern shows a clear truth. The tariffs aren't just impacting Ford, they are sending shockwaves across the industry, affecting thousands of jobs, delaying production, and forcing companies to revise long-term investment plans. The U.S. auto sector, once a symbol of national strength, now faces a landscape full of uncertainty, proving that protectionist policies can have far-reaching and unintended consequences. The tariffs are hitting American consumers directly, and the impact is immediate. The average price of a new car in the U.S. has risen by nearly $5,700 per vehicle since the 25% tariffs were imposed. Specific models like the Mustang Mach have jumped $1,500 to $2,000, the Bronco Sport by $600 to $1,500, and the Maverick by around $700. For many families, these increases aren't just numbers on a price tag. They're enough to change or even cancel car buying plans. What once was a dream of driving a new American-made vehicle now feels out of reach for many households. These higher prices are also reshaping consumer behavior. Instead of purchasing new cars, buyers are turning to the used car market, where prices are rising due to higher demand. Others are seeking gray market imports, cars brought in from other countries that bypass tariffs but often come with higher risks or fewer guarantees. In effect, the tariffs meant to protect domestic manufacturing are nudging American consumers toward alternatives that don't benefit U.S. automakers at all. The ripple effect doesn't stop at individual buyers. Car dealerships are seeing fewer sales, affecting their revenues and forcing some to cut staff or reduce inventory. Financing companies and auto insurance providers also feel the pressure as fewer new cars are sold. The consequences of the tariff policy extend beyond factories. They permeate communities, local economies, and the choices families make every day. The American public, intended to be protected by these tariffs, is instead paying the price for policies that were supposed to help them. The consequences of the tariffs are not confined to United States borders. They're sending shockwaves across the global auto market. China, one of the largest markets for American vehicles, retaliated with tariffs as high as 150% on imports from the United States, making cars like the F-150 Raptor, Mustang, Bronco, and Lincoln Navigator far less competitive. Ford was forced to temporarily suspend exports to avoid massive financial losses, cutting off a significant source of revenue. Europe and other international markets are feeling the impact as well. Increased logistics costs, combined with tariffs, have forced American car dealers to reduce orders and revise business strategies. In some cases, European competitors are able to offer more attractive pricing because their supply chains and production policies remain stable, giving them a significant advantage in the global market. The broader implication is clear: United States tariffs, intended to protect domestic manufacturing, are instead making American cars a luxury product internationally. They are losing market share to foreign competitors, limiting growth opportunities, and straining relationships with long-standing trade partners. What started as a domestic policy is now reshaping international trade dynamics, illustrating that protectionist measures can have consequences far beyond home soil. As the economic fallout spreads, political tensions rise. When asked about Ford's shutdowns and massive layoffs, President Donald Trump's response was blunt. They should have brought production back to America a long time ago. The statement stunned many, from workers to corporate leaders, highlighting a gap between political slogans and real-world consequences. For the public, the message is mixed. Supporters still rally behind the America First vision, seeing the tariffs as a bold move to protect United States industry. But for workers facing layoffs and communities grappling with economic uncertainty, the reality is far less comforting. Public opinion is divided, with growing concern that lofty promises are leaving ordinary Americans to bear the cost. Financial markets reacted immediately. Shares of Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis fell sharply, reflecting investor anxiety over the unstable trade environment and the lack of clear guidance from policymakers. Executives are now forced to make tough decisions in real time, balancing costs, layoffs, and delayed projects, all while the political climate adds another layer of uncertainty. This reality check reveals a hard truth. When politics collide with economics, the consequences can hit hardest on the people and companies meant to be protected. The tariffs' impact isn't just immediate. It's reshaping the long-term outlook for the United States auto industry. Analysts estimate that United States car manufacturers, including Ford, GM, and Stellantis, could face a combined $41.7 billion in additional costs due to disrupted supply chains, higher material prices, and stalled production. These are not abstract figures. They represent delayed investments, postponed vehicle launches, and a shrinking window of competitiveness in a global market. Projects like Ford's next-generation electric vehicles, including the T3, have been postponed, while plants such as Blue Oval City in Kentucky won't open until 2026. Restructuring supply chains to reduce reliance on imports from Canada and Mexico is costly and time-consuming, requiring months, if not years, to implement effectively. The longer this uncertainty persists, the greater the risk of losing market share to foreign competitors who face far more stable conditions. The stakes are enormous. Without timely adjustments, the American auto industry risks a slow decline, with job losses continuing, innovation stalling, and consumers paying the price through higher car costs. What was supposed to be a policy to strengthen domestic manufacturing may instead weaken the industry for years to come, leaving the next generation of workers and consumers to navigate the fallout. The warning signs are clear. Short-term political moves can create long-term economic storms. What we've seen unfold at Ford is more than a single company's struggle. It's a warning for the entire United States auto industry. Tariffs intended to protect jobs and rebuild domestic manufacturing have instead disrupted supply chains, forced layoffs, delayed new projects, and pushed car prices higher for everyday Americans. The promise of making America great again is colliding with the harsh reality that policies without careful planning can hurt the very people they aim to help. The story doesn't end here. Thousands of workers are out of jobs, production lines are idle, and global competitors are gaining ground. Communities that depend on these factories are facing economic stress, and consumers are paying the price at dealerships across the country. The question we must ask ourselves is clear. Is sacrificing American workers and long-term industrial stability really the cost we are willing to pay for a slogan? As the auto industry navigates this storm, staying informed has never been more critical. Subscribe to Deep State and hit the notification bell to follow every update on political decisions, economic shifts, and the impact on American industry. Ford's struggles may be just the opening chapter, and the coming months will reveal whether this is a temporary setback or the first signs of a deeper industrial crisis. Don't miss a moment of the story unfolding right before our eyes.